bringing the Sixers back into the conversation today, as Benny Boy was back in South Philly to do battle with the process last night. We'll see how that went there. The Eagles will obviously be at least half the conversation today as well as we march closer to the NFC Championship game. Liam Jenkins, boss man over at Philly Sports Network, great website, will be joining us at the 9 a.m. mark of the show, about the halfway point of the show for those watching on replay. If you're not down with that, I got 2 words for you. Well, more than 2 words for you. Train the AM starts in 30 seconds.
Holding, gets around in front.
And Philadelphia has it.
And a very good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trending in the AM, right here on DSM Media. We're live, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, you know the drill. Like, share, retweet, follow on all social media platforms. But do me that favor, head over to the DSM Media YouTube page, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and turn those notifications on. That way you never miss a moment when we are live on this channel. Lots of great content on the DSM Media channel all the time. Make sure you drop your comments, your thoughts, your questions as we continue our march towards the NFC Championship game and our date Sunday with the San Francisco 49ers. I am your host, Phil Stiefel. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Bearded Knowledge. Anytime you want to interact or converse about anything going on in sports or anything else, just hit me up. You know, I'm always there for you. We got lots to talk about today. Just so you know, it's a little programming note today about 9 a.m., about 30 minutes in for those watching replays, Liam Jenkins, the big guy over at Philadelphia Sports Network, phillysportsnetwork.com. Will be joining us. Obviously, big Eagles fan, passionate Eagles fan. We're going to get his thoughts on some of the topics going on. And he had a little video yesterday bashing the finalists for the comeback player of the year. I want to address that, his thoughts on that when he comes on the show. And we'll continue to talk Eagles. I saw some interesting conversations and things across social media all day yesterday and this morning. So we're going to continue tackling it. Tomorrow's show, we'll get down to the nitty-gritty. We'll get down to the X's and O's, the keys and the factors to victory. But today, we'll just continue just the conversation as we get going. But last night down in South Philly, we haven't had Sixers in the conversation much lately just because the Eagles have been dominating the conversation. Same thing that happened, back with the Phillies on their World Series run. Go Birds. That's right. Ben's a bum. We're going to start with Ben's a bum, and then we'll transition to go Birds later in the show, Joe. Last night, I knew today would have to have some conversation about the Sixers, to start the show because, Benny Boy Simmons back in the Wells Fargo Center, back in South Philly. And the emotional charge, like a lot of the Sixers players will say the right things. We're over it. We've moved on. We're focused on a championship. But, man, let me tell you something. They have not fully moved on. And the fan base damn sure hasn't moved on. When you saw it, the energy, the tension, you could cut the tension with a knife last night. Benny the Yips, man, I thought I screwed us last night. So the Sixers won last night, 137. I got the Yips. I got the Hicks. The Sixers won last night, 137-133. But they were dominating that game by halftime, early in the third quarter. I mean, up 12, 14 points at times, 10.5. They kept keeping it, double digits. And then I put out a tweet about how bad Ben Simmons is. And, of course, Ben Simmons goes on a run, puts up 12 points in about 10 minutes of game action. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, here we go. The Nets get back into it. But, yeah, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, the rivalry will never end. They may say the right things. They may talk that they've moved on, but it'll never end. And you saw it last night. Joel Embiid, to an extent last night, was almost too motivated and focused on the Ben Simmons drama, the Ben Simmons kind of relationship, bad relationship, the bad feelings that they have towards each other. Because you saw it, that was his focus the whole game. Every time Ben Simmons was guarding Joel Embiid, the ball was getting forced to him. Every time Joel Embiid, that there was the one dunk when he dunked over Ben Simmons and he looked over his shoulder, didn't see him. So in midair, looked over his other shoulder and kind of made sure to give him that death stare. Look, it's all fun and games. And you know what? I understand the emotion. I understand the energy that he needed to let out. And I think hopefully he got it out. Obviously, he did the I got 2 words for you, DX chop, crotch chop, after one of the big plays last night. The emotion was there, and Joel Embiid needed that. Joel Embiid obviously having an MVP caliber season again. Every season he seems to just continue to get better. But, you know, sometimes a player needs, to get that kind of frustration out of their system a little bit. And I think he did that last night. Now, next time we play the Nets, maybe they could calm it down a little bit. I was actually quite concerned with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and the rivalry last night because Joel Embiid, it's not that Joel Embiid went a little too hard last night. It almost felt like he was so focused on showing up Ben Simmons that he put his body in unnecessary risk and harm's way a couple times. And you saw him last night towards the end of the game. Shoulder, foot, knee, everything. I mean, he was limping. He was stretching out his shoulder nonstop. And it was because he was pushing it pretty hard and taking some unnecessary risks. So hopefully Joel gets that out of his system. And the Eagles, I'm so focused on the Eagles right now that I'm still saying the Eagles when I'm talking the Sixers right now. Hopefully he's got that out of his system. The Sixers have a very easy schedule in the sense of days off. They had a couple days off, played last night. They only play Saturday, I don't think they play again till. And then they have a couple more days off. So they're literally playing one game, in about 2 games, like an 8 or 9 day stretch. So a lot of days off to rest, recover, reheal that body. Because then mid-February, there's a stretch where they got 5 games in 7 days, late February. So they need to take advantage of this time frame to heal. But it was great to see Joel Embiid and the Sixers be able to dominate at first, but then when the game got close, and the game got close, yes, partially because Ben Simmons woke up and made a few shots, but it got close because Seth Curry went off last night. For as much as we hate Ben Simmons and we're glad he's out of town, losing Seth Curry in that trade was brutal. I mean, he went off last night, 7 for 10 from deep. He put up 32 points last night. I mean, he outscored Kyrie Irving last night. He was on fire last night. And, that was really why the game got close again. That was really why it was a tight game towards the end. It's because Seth Curry went off. And Seth Curry wanted to go off against his former team too, just like Ben Simmons probably did. But also you got the connection. His father-in-law is, Doc Rivers, and, wanting to show him up. I know a couple of those 3-point shots he made in the corner right by the Sixers bench, and he's walking by the bench. And, there's a little eye wink going on between Doc and Curry there. So there was a lot of emotions on the line last night. And there was a lot of emotions for us fans with it, too. I mean, I tweeted more than normal last night during the game because, of course, there's a lot of emotion. I can't believe that at one point, like 3 years ago, I wanted the Sixers to build around Ben Simmons, find the right pieces to put around him. But that guy has given up so much. He does not care about basketball one bit. Hopefully JoJo can be laser focused in the playoffs. He has yet to block out the noise, and he totally locked in, just like Joe. Yeah, I mean, Joel almost needs to take a page out of Jalen Hurts' book. Absolutely. Take a page out of that Mamba mentality that Jalen Hurts has. And it's a good thing that both Ben and Joel played last night, Joe, and I was going to touch on this because it gets the distraction out of the way now. I said it last night when the game was still out of hand, when they were still winning by double figures, that, remember, this Nets is a good team. Since they fired Steve Nash, and I said the day Steve Nash was hired, he was a bad head coaching hire for the Brooklyn Nets, and that was going to be a bad thing. Since they fired him, moved on to Jacques Vaughn, they've been a really good team. They're well coached. He's got them playing and believing. But they've lost Kevin Durant, and they're struggling without Kevin Durant, obviously. I mean, he's one of the best scorers in the history of the NBA. One of the best players in NBA history as well. When he comes back, they're a totally different team. It was good to get the noise, the distraction out of the way now, because when the playoffs come, and they will come, and if we are matched up against the Brooklyn Nets for a 7-game series, and Kevin Durant's back, it is going to be a dogfight. And you don't need the Ben Simmons drama causing problems. And so they got the distraction out of the way last night. Now, hopefully, Joel Embiid can be laser focused the next time they play the Brooklyn Nets and not worry about the jaw. You saw Joel giving a few elbows, extra little shoves to Ben Simmons. You saw PJ Tucker take a cheap shot at Ben Simmons' ribs, which is fine. I'm not calling him out for it. I'm glad he did it. Whatever. You saw Ben Simmons grabbing those ribs a little bit there, and that's all out of the way now. There'll never be that Doc Rivers Seth Curry rivalry. That'll never go away because that's family, and that'll always be something that's discussed on the Thanksgiving table and whatnot. But it's great to get that out of the way, and then you can move on and just be laser focused, like you said. And I hope so, and locked in. It's almost like Joel Embiid needs to sit down in a room with Jalen Hurts and just, how do you do it? How do you keep yourself so laser focused? Just take a page out of his book, take a lesson from him on how to just stay so motivated and keep your eye on the prize and ignore the distractions. Because there's plenty of distractions with Jalen Hurts. Whether it's the injury, the lack of the MVP, considerations, whatever it may be. There's plenty of distractions there. But he stays focused on the ultimate prize, which is a title. And the Sixers, for as bad as we've talked about them this year, they're still the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. They're now only 3 games back of the Boston Celtics. Hell, they've got like a 6 or 7 game lead over the 6th seed now. They have gone on this stretch. They had an easy stretch of the schedule. And we talked about it about a month ago. This patch of the schedule, mid-December through the end of January, that was their easy stretch. They got some tough games coming up in February. They've got some tough matchups the rest of the year, tough stretches of games coming up the rest of the year. But they've done what they needed to do during this easy stretch. They've gotten better as a team. They've figured out some of their rotation issues. And on top of all that, they've won those games. While players were out injured, while they're tweaking the rotation, while they're doing different things, they've taken care of business on top of that. I mean, the amount of win streaks they've had now, they've been stacking the win streaks. Lose a game or two, win 6 in a row like they just did. They had 8 in a row, 6 in a row, 3 in a row, stacking those win streaks. They took care of business. And that's what you want your team to do. And they are. And let's get to that Sixers rotation. Because, again, I said I wasn't sure about it. Last night was the first competitive game that I watched a lot of in a while because of the Eagles' focus. Since Tyrese Maxey is gone on the bench, a lot of those bench games, him coming off the bench, were West Coast games. It's hard to stay up till 1 in the morning watching a West Coast game. Got to be up early to do this show and then work. So last night was the first time I really, truly got to focus in on Tyrese Maxey, the bench player. Now, in theory, I don't like Tyrese Maxey coming off the bench. He's one of your 3 best players. There he is. No offense to Tobias Harris. Tyrese Maxey's the 3rd best player on this team. But having him come off the bench, it's doing a few things that's helping this team win and get better. And coming off the bench to start the game, they said it perfectly last night on the broadcast. As long as you can check your ego at the door and be okay with your name not being announced at the start of the game, because that's really the only thing that he's losing by not starting. He's not introduced with the starters because he's still on the court at the end of the game. Last 5-7 minutes of the game, Tyrese Maxey's out there on the court with Joel, with James Harden. So he's still playing 30 minutes a game. You get the first 5-6 minutes of the game, more focus on Joel Embiid and James Harden. They're still trying to figure out their pick and roll and their game and their system and how they work best together. They've both said there's still a long way to go before they're perfect together. You get 5 or 6 minutes of those two just focusing on it. You're getting in the flow of the game. And then Tyrese Maxey comes off the bench with his burst of energy. And his burst of energy is perfect for a bench role type, whether you get down early or up early, whatever it may be, or it's a tough game, that little burst of energy off the bench changes up the speed of the game as soon as he comes onto the court. And Joel and James are already in the flow of the game. I think it's working out really well. Now, some people say, well, why is P.J. Tucker still starting? Look, P.J. Tucker, we've been told and we've heard it 1,000 times, we won't see what P.J. Tucker's value really is till the playoffs. And that's fine. And if they want to keep starting him, that's fine. I mean, he played 19 minutes last night. So it wasn't like, it's the same, it's the complete opposite, but exactly the same as, don't worry about Tyrese Maxey starting, as long as he's playing 30 minutes a game and is in there in the crunch time. And don't worry about P.J. Tucker starting, as long as he's playing 20 or less minutes a game and he's not on the court at the end of the game. So who seems the most likely Sixers to get dealt as of today? Korkmaz will probably get traded. Korkmaz and possibly Jaden Springer. There's a lot of rumors going around, a lot of reports and a lot of stories and articles being written that those guys are going to get traded not to bring in more pieces, but to clear cap space. Whether they get traded for picks or trade exceptions or whatnot, they probably will get moved on just to clear space because they are above the luxury tax and stuff like that. Matisse, on the other hand, if Matisse gets traded, and I want to make one Matisse comment here in a second. If Matisse gets traded, that's to bring in another bench piece because he's still a valuable piece, and he'll be a restricted free agent at the end of the year. You try to move him for another scorer off the bench. But, last night, watching that game last night, and Ben Simmons, it got me thinking, and it got me thinking a lot about, at this point, who would you rather on your roster, Matisse Thybulle or Ben Simmons? And at this point, you got to think you'd want Matisse Thybulle on your roster. Ben Simmons has regressed so much as a basketball player. Now, some Brooklyn fans will say, well, he didn't play all of last year, so he's still trying to get back into the flow a bit. No, Ben Simmons does not care about basketball, and you see it. Like, he does not do anything anymore. The things he did well in Philly, the pushing the basketball, defensive pressure, at least cutting, yeah, he won't shoot the ball, but there was plenty of times in Philly and plenty of games where he was aggressive and he would bring the ball up and just dart past every defender and get right to the rim for a dunk. He don't do any of that anymore. Nothing. He literally is. His crybaby attitude and his whining attitude has just compounded so much. Matisse gives you just as much defensive presence. Matisse will at least shoot the ball. Watching that game last night just really made me think, seriously, why do we have to even ask the question, who would you rather, Ben Simmons or Matisse? And it shouldn't be a conversation. But it is, and it's pathetic. Yeah, he got paid. Doesn't really care anymore. Yeah, I joke. We always joke, me and Jason, who's on the show a lot with me, about that Carson Wentz doesn't want to play football anymore. He cares about his hunting and his after football life. He got paid. That's all that mattered to him. He's not going to play till he's 39 years old. Well, the same thing applies with Ben Simmons. This might be Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons will probably get one more contract. It won't be a max deal, but he'll get one more contract. But Ben Simmons isn't going to play 10 more years in the NBA. He don't care. He took that paycheck, and that's all he cared about. And Ben Simmons is going to play till he's 30, 32, and then he's going to be done. That's a shame. It's a waste of talent. Because let's be honest, Ben Simmons does have, I shouldn't say does, did have a lot of potential and a lot of talent. He just was babied and coddled way too much by the Brett Brown era on this team. So, it's crazy that conversation even has to be had. But back to Tyrese Maxey coming off the bench. I mean, last night, just look at his line last night. 27 points off the bench, 6 and 9 from 3, a couple rebounds, 5 assists, a couple steals. He's starting to figure it out and fit into that role. And if you look at the minute allocation last night, it was a close ball game last night. PJ Tucker played 18 minutes. Harris, 33. And Embiid and Harden each played 35, which is great to see that number down a little bit. I love that. Melton starting in place of Maxey, 34 minutes. And he's starting to he seems to play better starting versus coming off the bench. Niang only played 17. Harrell played 12. Maxey's 30. Thybulle played 12 minutes. And Shake Milton played 15. That's a well-balanced lineup. You're not pushing Joel to 38, 40 minutes. James Harden was averaging 38, 39 minutes, 4 less minutes. Makes a big deal. Tucker and Yang under 20 keeps them fresh for playoffs. If you can have a rotation like you did last night, you're going to continue to win basketball games. And they're going to continue to figure out how to play in that rotation. I mean, you say who's going to get traded, who are we going to bring in? There's a scenario in my head where you don't need to make a move on this team. Maybe you want to bring in a backup big. I've seen a few people, a few content creators, a few art writers and reporters say maybe a backup big because as good as Montrezl Harrell's played, there are some size issues there. And when you go up against another team with a real big center come playoff time, you might need somebody other than Montrezl Harrell to play backup center minutes. Kind of like last year we had the DeAndre Jordan and Bebo Paul rotation in the playoffs. Depending on the matchup, who would play, you might need something like that come playoff time. But outside of that, this team, if they play at their peak, if they all get comfortable in their roles, if Joel Embiid and James Harden could figure it out, as long as nobody gets hurt, this team doesn't need to make a move. This team is super talented. And it's taken a few months, but they're starting to gel. And that's what the whole point of this is. They are starting to gel at the right time. They've taken this easy stretch. They figured it out. They've put it together. And now you're going to enter this super tough stretch of games here in February, and they're going to be at their peak level. Now, I am concerned about Joel Embiid being healthy. He is banged up beyond belief. His shoulder, his foot, his knee, his back, everything. You just see already, we're, how many games into this season? What's the Sixers record right now? They are 31-16, so that is 47 games into a 82-game season. So just past the halfway mark. And he looks like it's game 82 out there already. He looks like it's the playoffs. He looks banged up. So maybe a backup big would not be a bad idea to add so that we could continue to maybe load man. I know everybody hates that load management. Everybody wants to see Joel play, but you kind of, just like we're going to see the full effect of PJ Tucker come playoff, you need Joel Embiid as close to 100% in the playoffs as possible. So maybe you need to do something else there, find another backup center, because let's be honest, you cannot have Joel Embiid this banged up. Now, come April, dude, he is going to be limping his way to the finish line. So that is a concern for me. But also last night, like, he got banged up, last night a lot because he was just, the emotions of the moment were just getting to him a little bit. And that kind of, is part of the problem there. So maybe if he learns to keep his emotions in check a little bit more, and we have a little bit less of the Ben Simmons, drama, so to say, then it won't be as big of a deal. He'll protect himself a little bit better. Guy needs to learn to protect himself when he's out on the court. There's no doubt about it. There was one foul. He went for the continuation dunk, and he came up gimpy last night. He didn't need to go for the continuation dunk. That just put undue stress on his body. So, but that's that. I mean, I think, honestly, I've been the harshest critic of Doc Rivers. I think I've been harsher on Doc Rivers than pretty much anybody in Philadelphia sports. I mean, Jonathan Gannon, Doc Rivers I've been harsher on. Who else out there have I been harsh on? Howie Roseman in the past, Carson Wentz, Ben Simmons, whoever I've been harsh on. I've been the harshest on Doc Rivers. But I got to give him credit. I mean, this team looked like they were in the middling, stuck in the mud kind of team. They were going to barely make it to the 5th or 6th seed, and he's stuck to it. He's tinkered, he's tweaked, the rotation and how things are done. And look, he's never going to get the full vote of confidence from me. But he's doing his best to try to figure it out. And he is. I mean, like I said, we are three games back of the Boston Celtics, the number 1 team. And we are locked solid in that number 2 spot right now. Yeah, the Bucks are half game behind us. But whether you're 1, 2, or 3, I mean, I think it's negligible at that point. I think of a little tip of the cap, not a job well done because the job is not done, but hey, you're on the right path, kind of tip of the cap to Doc Rivers needs to be given. You would never have heard me say this before, but I'm saying it now. I got to write this down here, 20 minutes. All right. Yeah, I mean, you would never have heard me say that. But here I am saying, good job, Doc. Now let's see if you can keep it going. Let's see if you can keep building on it. Because again, let's go over this Sixers schedule. Again, it was a great win last night. It really was. And then they've got a couple days off. And then Saturday they play Denver. Tough game. Even though it's at home, it's still a tough game. Saturday afternoon, that's great. I love the 3 o'clock game on Saturday. And then you get a day off and you got Orlando. Day off, Orlando. Day off, New York. Day off. So they had a couple days off after Sacramento, played Brooklyn, couple days off, played Denver. Then it's every other day, games. And then you start on February 8th, Wednesday, a real tough stretch. You go Boston, day off, New York, Brooklyn, back-to-back, day off Houston, day off Cleveland. You're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in a 7-day stretch. Some really tough teams. I mean, and on top of that, after you get through that tough stretch of games and days, you've got Cleveland, you've got Memphis, then Boston, then Miami, Dallas. Look at this stretch. You're going to go Cleveland, Memphis, Boston, Miami, Dallas, Milwaukee, Indiana. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight games against really damn good basketball teams. Damn talented, well coached. That's a problem. So it's a good thing we're winning these games now while we're learning. So hopefully when we get to that stretch late in February, we're continuing to roll. You got that many good teams on your schedule in a row. You hope to go 3-3, 4-2, 4-3, whatever it may be. But we hope to go 3-2 on that West Coast trip, which I don't care what the level of the teams we played on a 5-game West Coast trip. When you go on the road to the West Coast as an East Coast team for 5 games in a row, it's tough. Sacramento's a really damn well coached team. They might not have the superstars. De'Aaron Fox might not have evolved into that star, but that was a good win. Beating the Clippers, who are playing damn good basketball, still have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. That's a damn good win. If they would have gone 3-2 on that stretch, we would have been talking of positivity and how good they looked there. They went 5-0. So, let's tip the cap. Doc Rivers has done a damn good job up to this point, getting the team ready for this point, and continuing to build and grow, which is all we can ask for. The only thing now moving forward that we can ask for, outside of continuing to develop this relationship between James Harden and Joel Embiid, continuing to figure out how Tyrese Maxey fits in coming off the bench, the only other thing we can ask for is health. If Joel Embiid can get as close to and stay as close to 100% healthy as possible, that's all that matters. At this point, that is all that matters. Look, this team goes as far as Joel Embiid. I know James Harden is James Harden, but this team goes as far as Joel Embiid takes them. And we've seen it the last couple of years, how banged up he was in the playoffs, a broken frickin' face, a torn meniscus, and he played through it all, and you got to give him credit for toughing it out. But we might not be a second-round exit every single year if Joel Embiid doesn't just, even if Joel Embiid just has the common banged-up body that most players have at the end of a season. I'll take that. But he's got to learn to protect himself and not let we want Joel Embiid to be fully engaged in every game, but not let the emotions of the game overtake him. And last night, the emotions of the game started to overtake him a little bit. And you saw it. You saw the beginning of the game and how great we were playing and the emotions and the DX chops. And why is it every time DX is brought into the Sixers, something bad happens? I mean, hell, they came out to ring the bell one time in the playoffs a year or two ago. We got blown out of that game. Something with the DX and the Sixers that just doesn't work. So can we just stop with the DX stuff and the Sixers, please? Come on, Joel, please. Move on from DX. Come up with something else. Do the Stone Cold move instead. Do something. Put your arm up like The Rock or Randy Orton. I don't care. All right, so we're going to reset here for a second. This is Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. I am Phil Seifman. We're going to welcome in our special guest here for this morning's show. We got my main man, Liam Jenkins. He is the big boss man behind Philly Sports Network. If you guys aren't familiar with Philly Sports Network, it is one of the best websites there is covering Philly sports out there. And I say that, I read a lot of websites. I read a lot of articles. The thing I love about Philly Sports Network is that they do things the right way. There's no bold hot takes. There's no clickbait media. There's nothing like that. So I'm really honored to have Liam, join the show this morning. Good morning, my man.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it, and thanks for the kind words. I mean, that's all we've ever set out to do. So knowing if that's the first impression we make, we're doing something right. So it's good to be here for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've been following you guys for a long time. I've had a lot of your writers. I've had Sean on, Zach on, Brian, Aaron. I've had a lot of them on the show in the past, and I've said it to them all. I mean, there's too much of the clickbait stuff going on in the media. And how, as a guy that runs a website, and you guys have gotten super big in the past year or so, everything that's going on with Metro, I mean, that's awesome stuff. How have you guys been able to keep it under control that you're not, falling into the trap that these other sites fall into, that the most clickbait headlines, that's what they always do in topics? How do you manage that?
I think a lot of it is it's the culture we set. I mean, for me, it was always the aim personally. And I think a lot of where clickbait and stuff comes down to, at the end of the day, is greed. Because all you try to do is get clicks for whatever reason, be it financially, be it because you've got a target from, I know some of the other blogs, that's how they operate, whatever it may be. For us, it was never been about that. As soon as I could do this job full time, I was like, cool, I don't need anything else. Doesn't matter if I make bare minimum, doesn't matter if I have a Lamborghini next week. I'm going to approach it the same way. And I think for our writers, it's building that same thing and setting the same tone and knowing, look, if you want to make it in this industry, we'll do all we can to bust these doors down and get you as many opportunities as we can. but we've got to do it the right way. Like, we don't want one person going off here writing all these clickbait things and the rest being good. So it's finding the right people to build around. I tell everyone that ever comes on, it's like building a football team, you know? Like, you're going to have busts, you're going to have misses. But at the end of the day, if you can find 2 or 3 cornerstone players to be there for 5 years and then they set the tone for everyone else, like, that's where we're at. So yeah, it's great fun. Like, we just find a team of people that want to do it for the same reasons as us, and the rest comes easy.
I love it. So you talk about culture, and you know, we're here. We're with Eagles. It's Eagles Championship week, and we've been building towards Sunday here every day on this show. And you know, the topic I talked about a little bit yesterday, and I wanted to lead into it, and we'll get to. I do want to say I want to get to your video you did last night on Brandon Graham and the comeback player of the year. So we're going to get to that in a minute. But culture is so important on this football team, and what Nick Sirianni has done, the swagger he's brought, Jalen Hurts, the culture he's brought. You know, we were just talking Sixers and Joel Embiid and, you know, controlling his emotions and blocking out the outside noise. What is it about Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts that has, you know, gotten them? They're doing the same thing as you. They're blocking out the outside noise. How important is it for a football team, especially at this point of a season, to be able to block out that outside noise, the disrespect that is coming from every media outlet there is out there?
It's imperative. And I think the one thing that has always separated this Eagles team, I think, starts with Jeffrey Lurie. I mean, he doesn't get the credit he deserves. A lot of people, for whatever reason, there's a lot of noise that comes out about he's too hands-on, he's too, like, in the middle, there's too many decisions he's involved in. But you look at the coaching hires, you can even say the same with Doug Peterson. The culture he put in for that 2-3 year window got them to that Super Bowl, like the underdog mentality. With Nick Sirianni, again, another coaching hire by the Eagles at the time was laughed at, the same as Doug Peterson. 2 years later, you're looking at someone now that has got that team wrapped around him. And I think the other thing that plays into it is that there has been a massive change in the types of players that the Eagles tried to draft and bring in. A few years ago, it was the likes of the Dorial Green Beckhams. I mean, you go back there, the amount of arrests and DUIs and off-the-field incidents and Nigel Bradham umbrella scenarios, like, it was endless. And now you're looking at so many guys coming from Alabama or who have relationships to Jalen Hurts, like these schools with insane reputations. I'm pretty sure the stat is, like, the last draft class, 90% of the players were captains, and the one before it, they all were. Like, these are all leaders. They're all players that have been on that team to lead, that have pushed to that next level and set the bar. So you get a whole group of guys doing that, and it just becomes so much easier to manage. Like, my genuine worry when they first acquired AJ Brown was, all right, how are they going to get the ball to him and Devontae Smith? Is there going to be a bit of ego if AJ has to give up 20% of his receptions a year? And the fact that the opposite has happened, I think, is a huge testament to the culture they've got inside that locker room, where selflessness is being promoted because the end result is a ring, and you're not going to get there by individual game.
I think you bring up a great point, because you said that Jeffrey Lurie, some people will say he's too hands-on or whatever, but I don't think it's as much as people think hands-on, because there's the other owner down in Dallas, Jerry Jones. He's too hands-on and making too many of the football decisions. Jeffrey Lurie's hands-on, but he lets his football people make the decisions. And he also gives, like, you know, we give Howie Roseman a lot of crap in the city over the years, but he was given the ability to make his mistakes and learn from his mistakes. And having that stability at the top, Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, and Jeffrey giving Howie that, you know, yeah, you made some mistakes. Can you fix them? Can you learn from them? Let's keep the culture you've built. Let's change it. Let's make some slight adjustments and tweaks. That translates down to the rest of the team. That, oh, I screw up one time, I make a trade for Beckham Jr., you know, then I'm fired, you know, because I made that one mistake. He's got the vote of confidence of Jeffrey to learn from his mistakes and continue building towards this culture.
I mean, it directly plays into the quarterback position as well. The analogy I always make is that every team in the NFL is trying to find the next Peyton Manning. They're trying to find the next Andrew Luck, even if he obviously didn't retire, but guys that you can just, within 2 years, go, yeah, that's my guy for 10 years. And it doesn't work like that. I mean, if you go back 2 drafts ago, or like, you know, the top picks from then, I mean, Trevor Lawrence only really is coming out of his shell a little bit, and luckily got his way through the playoffs, like that first round, but it's not happening for a lot of quarterbacks. And there is so much pressure on teams who have an awful year to go, right, just get the quarterback sorted. Like the Jets, another fine example. Like, you know, Zach Wilson's probably done after this year. The thing that I think, again, separates the Eagles here is that you had a guy, Carson Wentz, who was athletically gifted, could make all the throws in the world, character-wise just didn't mesh with the rest of that team. Like, and you can phrase it how you want, you can look at the relationships he's had, but like what it came down to is it just wasn't the right personality for that team. Jalen Hurts at the time he was drafted might not have been the finished product at quarterback, but as a leader, as a character, as a teammate, as someone you want in that locker room, had every intangible in the world. And I'll relate it to me. Like, if I'm a boss, like I've said this to so many people, like I would much rather bring on someone that has never written an article in their life, can barely write an article, but wants to learn, wants to work hard, and wants to be part of what we're building, rather than someone that's worked at ESPN, that's got an insane resume, ego, doesn't really try hard. And like, it's mad how much those just subtle things and just trying to find the right people like make a difference. And yeah, it didn't take long for Jalen Hurts to win this team over, and I think that we're reaping those rewards now.
I've been talking about it all week. Jalen Hurts has that Mamba mentality, that Kobe Bryant mentality, and I've brought on some coaches in the past on this show, and I talk about when you're evaluating quarterback talent, I would be looking at that Mamba mentality. If you have decent arm strength or decent skill set, but you've got the leadership, the work ethic, and the drive, not enough of that is put into the evaluation. It's put into the evaluation process, but not enough. It's all about the pro day and the combine. Can they make that 30-yard back shoulder throw? And not enough is put into what kind of leader they're going to be.
Yeah.
And if you're a hard worker, you put the effort in, you could get better. I said it this offseason. There was no way Jalen Hurts wasn't going to be better than last year. Now, was he going to be this good? I didn't know, but he was going to be better. And that's what you should want in your quarterback, not the guy that's got the perfect arm strength. So that can be taught. Footwork can be taught. I mean, do they not put enough, evaluation into or stock into the leadership of these players when you're drafting Zach Wilson number 2 overall in the draft and he's clearly not ready for that point in his career?
Yeah, and that's what you look at. Like, it's so easy, obviously, like, hindsight is 2020, but you look at the Zach Wilson move now and the comments he's made about the team this year, and at the end of the day, that's Joe Douglas as a GM who came from that Howie Roseman school. Could very easily have been a Howie move, It's the same type of thought process that goes there, but again, that focus on the right type of guys, I think, has done this team wonders. Defense. I mean, it says a lot that Darius Slay has earned that captain stripe on defense. Like, he hadn't had it his entire career, despite all the Pro Bowls, all the amazing years he's had, never got the captaincy. And he's came on as a leader, as a veteran. At the time, was a very young group of guys and corners. He was the only real experienced starter there. And now he's been given that. And it's sort of, again, that growth and that nurturing the right thing. And yeah, you now go against the team, in San Francisco, where the defense, we know it's vaunted. We know it's filled with veterans. We know the offense is filled with stars. But you look at Brock Purdy and you go, okay, like, he's got his way through. He's got a star-studded cast on offense. But we know for a fact that if the boot was on the other foot and it was Jalen Hurts coming into this, that we know enough about the mentality. We know enough about, like, the heart. Like, even in those first few games as a rookie, when he came out and he blew up the Saints defense that hadn't allowed, like, a 100-yard rushing game in forever, did it all himself. Like, we know he's that type of character. I don't know if we know that about Brock Purdy, other than the fact that there is this, like, almost automatic underdog story because he's Mr. Irrelevant, because he's that late round pick, and he's came into this offense and done well. Like, I don't think we've seen enough adversity for Purdy. Hurts has been there and done it. He had to grind out that starting role and lead this team. And I know he's kind of accidentally segued into the Niners here, but I don't think we've seen enough from Purdy when his back's against the wall, where he's got to make these clinical throws. And I think that ultimately could be the difference, is that Jalen Hurts now has hit that level and kind of grown through those, what are growing pains.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for segueing me into the 49ers, because I love to talk about this for a second, because there's some points I've been trying to bring up. And, look, Brock Purdy, the people that are comparing him to Tom Brady, I know the stories there and all. I love it. It's whatever. I'm not a Brock Purdy fan. I agree with everything you just said. But, and I saw a stat yesterday, no rookie quarterback has ever won an NFC championship game on the road. So everything's favoring the Eagles to win, and I do think the Eagles win this game. But the people that are also saying that Brock Purdy has never experienced anything like he's about to experience Sunday at the Link, the crowd, the energy, the noise, the opponent, the type of opponent they're facing, that's all factoring into why I think the Eagles win. But the one thing that's given me not doubt, but reminder that this is going to be a close game, and just because of Brock Purdy, it's not going to be an Eagles blowout, is let's look about it. We talk about culture with the Eagles and the system. The 49ers have been there, done that. I mean, there's a lot of guys. They were in the championship game last year. They were in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. A lot of guys still from that Super Bowl team. Shanahan, Lynch, that team and culture is established. While the Eagles are establishing their culture, Kyle Shanahan and the leaders on that team are not going to let Brock Purdy feel too overwhelmed in the moment. And that's the one thing that is keeping in the back of my head, that this is going to be a dogfight and a battle on Sunday.
Absolutely. I mean, it's easy for, I guess, that bias to set in if, like, it's the Eagles at home, at the Link, at night. Like, you got the Niners traveling across the country for this game. The experience of Brock Purdy's going to travel in. And at the end of the day, like, yeah, he probably is going to be nervous and he is going to make some errant throws. I think you're absolutely right. What I would say worries me is the caveat to that is that there is a prime opportunity now for this Eagles team to really set the tone, to really come in. Like, we know they've had the most sacks of any Eagles team in history. I think it's like the third most of all time of any team, and which terrifies me because, like, they barely blitz. So I'm like, all right, if there's ever a time to just really get at Brock Purdy, to really attack what's a very strong offensive line, to keep McCaffrey sort of quiet. We know he can come off and chip block. Like, just keep him silenced in a way. Get Purdy off that rock. Like, get him off his perch. Because when he's out of the pocket and he's scrambling, he's no Jalen Hurts. Very few people in this world are. But he's very much a Gardner Minshew. I would say that there's a level of, oh my God, like he's running backwards. It's sort of deer in headlights. Like, let Reddick, who apparently shouldn't have as many sacks as he does, let those guys feast. Like, let's get after the quarterback. And if he's gonna fumble, if he's gonna mess up, great. If he doesn't, a fair testament to him. But there are other ways to win that game.
Just so you know, literally 15 minutes before the show started, I saw on Twitter, a 49. I don't know if they're a website. They have a lot of followers, a lot of subscribers, a lot of readers. They said that the Eagles' sack number is not that impressive. If you take away their 3 best games, they're just middle of the pack, and that's the kind of clickbait.
Yeah, I mean,
but no, that's a load of crap. You can't take away 3 games worth of sacks and say, well, then 14 games they're middle of the pack compared to our 17 games.
It's really tricky because the second you start, I mean, I've always said, like, a statistic should, like, elevate the argument, not be the argument. So the argument shouldn't be the Eagles have had the most sacks in team history. It should be like they're this good because they've done it, and it's like attributes to it. It's the same way that you get into quarterback debates, and this is what, like, really irritates me with them, is that especially with Jalen Hurts we've seen this year, right? Like, last year and the year before, like, oh, they need to surround Hurts with talent. He's not very good, like, blah, blah, blah. So you surround him with talent, and then it's, well, the talent's making him look better. Like, anyone can throw behind the offensive line. Anyone could throw passes to those receivers. And it's like, well, what? You can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, is he a good quarterback with bad players, or is he now a good quarterback? Like, you can't just go, he's a bad quarterback with great players, and that's why he's good. In the same way, well, the Eagles, if you take these really good games out, they'd be an average defense. Like, yeah, but they had those good games, you didn't. It's that simple, I mean,
if you take Nick Bosa's 18.5 sacks out, the 49ers would have been the worst team in the league at getting after the quarterback. Look, it's the disrespect that's the national narrative against this Eagles team. You look at it with the awards and the lack of recognition in some of these awards. And I saw your video. I was going to bring up this topic as a whole today anyway. Then I saw your little short video you did last night about, Brandon Graham not being in Comeback Player of the Year award, finalist there. And first off, before you get into that specific, what do you think it is that they're not getting the respect they deserve in a lot of these categories and a lot of these awards? I mean, because they're 14-3. The record speaks for themselves.
I would say, like, I mean, I don't know if it is just because the narrative of Purdy is more attractive at this point than the Eagles, like, because you've got that kind of, like, darling, like, the rookie quarterback that could come in and make all these waves, like, and social media pages will love it because they know if Brock Purdy does even anything, it's like Patrick Mahomes. If he throws a nice pass, it's instant clicks, sort of same thing. I also think that the Eagles are so used to, like, that is their identity of being overlooked. And I think that especially the past couple of years, like until this year at least with Jalen Hurts, national games haven't really been there because they've been pretty poor. So you look at teams that have been in that national spotlight, it's been the Niners, it's been the Rams until they just fell apart this year. So I don't think guys like Colin Cowherd, and this is no disrespect to those national analysts or Skip Bayless or whoever, they don't sit there and watch every NFL game. They might watch Red Zone on a Sunday, and they might watch the primetime games, and they'll look for the stars because that is what drives debates. Jalen Hurts will drive debates. He's now received attention, but that's an individual and not the team. It's not, oh, Sean McVay and the Rams, and McVay's great because of the Rams. And Sirianni doesn't have that, like, caliber yet. of this is a coach and look at the amazing things he's done. And he should do. He absolutely should do. But I think just because there's been a lack of national awareness, that it leads to the Eagles being overlooked. And if you just ask a casual fan in a neutral site, like, oh, who's going to win on Sunday? Like, they might go with the Niners just because that's the narrative they're used to. I don't think it's any direct disrespect. I don't think people are maliciously trying to like put down.
I think that's a very fair point and way of looking at it there. That's why I love you guys. You guys always look at it fair way. Except for when it comes to Brandon Graham not being in the Comeback Player of the Year award, right? Because what did these other guys do to get Comeback Player of the Year? And Brandon Graham is one. I have another name after you give me why Brandon Graham should be on this list. But I got another name for you. These three names, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, and who was the other? Oh, Geno Smith.
Well, there you go. You don't even know. Like that's the whole point.
I mean, I know the Geno Smith story's nice, but he didn't come back from anything. He just got a little bit better than he already was.
Yeah, and I mean that's what I don't get. Like it really irks me. Like Christian McCaffrey didn't. He just got traded. Like okay, he was great in a bad team, and now he's great on a good team. But you haven't come back. There's no, you haven't been rug pulled. If anything, you've been given a way out. Like that's. And it's not most improved player of the year, in which case he still wouldn't be it because he was good anyway. Like Geno Smith, you could argue, but again, he hasn't come back from anything. He was just bad, and then got made a starter elsewhere and was all right. Like it's dumb. Like the only one I can excuse is Saquon Barkley, but even then, it was a mid-season injury. He missed like I want to say 5 games. I might be wrong. Came back like that was last year. It didn't take like 8 months of rehabbing an already healed injury. I had man flu 2 months ago. I haven't got comeback player of the year because I started working. Like I'm not still suffering from it. It's dreadful. Like yeah, it's an embarrassment.
I would have thought Brandon Graham. I mean, massive injury, comes back, double-digit sacks, and that's playing like such a small percentage of snaps game, per game anyway. Or hell, you want to give it, if you want to call it most improved, fine. If you're going to call it comeback, hell, give it to Brian Robinson. At least he got shot, came back and started games and played. I mean, what did Saquon or Christian McCaffrey do compared to Brian Robinson? Brian Robinson was freaking shot and came back and played football this year. That's what a comeback is, not just moving teams mid-season and, going from unmotivated on a bad Panthers team to motivated on a good 49ers team. I mean, I think it's kind of pathetic there.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely agree. Like it's stupid. I think Coach of the Year Nick Sirianni being overlooked is another embarrassment. I mean, considering I've been tracking the odds most of the year just for content purposes, and he's been favourite literally from about week 2 onwards. And outside of Brian DeBola, I don't get how he was up there really. Like the Giants team didn't really do anything. Like the Cowboys fumbled the bag on the last week of the season. The Giants skipped into they beat a Vikings team, but it doesn't count at that point. Like.
Right.
I understand the NFC East that it was a bit of a mess this season, like schedule-wise, and that's why they're all good. But realistically, you've got a team that had the best record in the NFC, had the most sacks in history. Hurts is an MVP. Like, just for the growth of Hurts alone, Sirianni should be in that conversation.
Yeah, I think it really should just come down to Sirianni and what you just said. And hell, if you want to say Kyle Shanahan, I'd be even okay with that. But the other guys, I mean, Kyle Shanahan, at least he had to go through 3 different quarterbacks this year and to keep that team playing. But, Brian Daboll, it was a great story. And it's nice to see them doing a little bit better and starting to build something there. But he didn't do anything special to outrank Nick Sirianni. It literally makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I kind of feel like when the results are released, and I know Shane Steichen's on Coordinator of the Year, and obviously Hurts is in the MVP finalist, I just know, and deep in my gut, I know none of these Eagles members are going to get represented here and win awards because, people just don't look at the Eagles and vote for them. I don't know why, but everything says they should, but they're just not going to get those final votes.
It's strange. It is weird. And I think a lot of it, again, just comes back to reputation. I mean, I don't even live in Philadelphia, and I hate the fact that it still to this day gets such a bad rap fan-wise, and it snowballs at Sansa, and it's all these other things. And it's like an Eagles fan could cuss somewhere and it would go viral. And yet you will see a Vikings fan beat someone to death and it'll be like, no, that's a shame. And there's just no, do you know what I mean? Like there's no.
I do. I've traveled the world for work before, and I have been beating the drum for 20 years trying to explain to people that exact same thing that you just described there. And it doesn't work. Not at all.
No, it's, it is what it is. But again, I think it's hard to imagine Philadelphia without that. Like, I couldn't imagine, if you go back even to, let's just say this year, if the Union had won, if the Eagles go on to win the Super Bowl, if the Sixers do well, obviously the Phillies made the World Series, and then that was sustained for a few years. I couldn't imagine, even then, there would still be a way that we end up underdogs and everyone overlooks us. It's just the way it is. But I think if you took that out and everyone adored the Eagles, there would almost be a repent from Eagles fans of no, you're not. Go back to hating us. This is weird. I don't like it. It's everyone in Philadelphia needs therapy purely because of sports teams, and it just is what it is. That's who we are.
All right. Let's get back to this championship game real quick as we wrap this interview up here. Confidence level going into Sunday for the team as a whole, but more so, like we were just before you came on the show, I was talking Sixers and Joel Embiid and how he is the most important. Yeah, James Harden's great and everything else around the team's great, but Joel Embiid being healthy carries the Sixers. Jalen Hurts is really what drives the bus of the Eagles. How do you feel after the game last week about confidence in his shoulder, his health? Because if he's healthy, the Eagles should win this game. If he's still banged up really bad and they can't release, him full bore, that's a problem. That's a concern. How are you feeling about Jalen Hurts and how that leads into your confidence this weekend?
I don't feel too concerned at all. I mean, of course, last week's performance wasn't exactly the glistening, dominant showing from him. But at the end of the day, he didn't have to be great when the rushing attack was that good. And it's I understand the Niners defense, I think, is number 2 in the league. I might be wrong, which is some change from the Giants being bottom of the barrel. But I do think that there's an element there of, if you can run away from Nick Bosa, where those runs are typically better anyway, there is a chance that Menahue might not be playing because of the obvious arrest we saw earlier this week. Whether the Niners decide to line him up or no, that's their judgment. But even if he is, there's a distraction element there where I think that the Eagles can be very smart with that rushing attack, where even Kenny Gainwell made an impact last week, where, all right, let's say Hurts isn't 100% and he can't unleash those deep balls consistently. I don't think he has to. I mean, you're going to have play. The thing is with this offense is that it's so versatile with the way that everyone can line up, where if you want to run AJ Brown deep, someone's going to have to go with him. The safety's going to have to move. And especially with this Niners defense that can play a lot of soft zone. Yes, they like their corners playing up front, but they love their linebackers in the middle of the field, being that heart and soul, which is what I kind of miss with the Eagles. The Jordan Hicks, the DeMeco Ryans, funnily enough, back in the day. But yeah, I think because of that, it's going to open up a lot of windows for Hurts to kind of manipulate them, to let his eyes, we know he's a very intelligent football player. Tom Brady doesn't have an arm anymore, but he can still move the ball down the field because he's so intelligent. Not that Hurts is on that same level, but the way he can read defense is now, it's very, very rare you see him make a bad decision. Bad throws happen to everyone. If you're injured, they'll happen more. Bad decisions and bad throws are 2 different things, I know you're a golf guy. If you take on an aggressive golf shot, it doesn't work. Bad decision, bad shot. Take on a safe shot, it doesn't work. Doesn't really matter too much, the consequence is minimal. So if it comes down to damage limitation, the rushing offense is that dominant, I think, especially on that other side of Nick Bosa, where I think they'll be okay. And yeah, they can do enough with Jalen Hurts, as a rusher, as a short, area passing quarterback, where he'll be fine. I have no doubts.
So that means then you are 100% confident that this Eagles team is playing in the Super Bowl in a few weeks in Glendale, Arizona?
Yeah.
That's not Homer-ish. Your favorite team, you're picking them. This is analyst Liam Jenkins. You are confident the Eagles get the job done on Sunday.
I'd be very surprised if they didn't. I think that the Eagles have an advantage in 2 major areas. One's quarterback. Hurts could be at 50%. I think it's still an advantage. Agreed. And the other one's just in the trenches. I think the offensive line's brilliant. Jason Kelce somehow playing at an outworldly level at the age he is unbelievable. And on the defensive front, I think there's enough damage there to really knock Brock Purdy off his perch. And would you rather see if Nick Bosa gets after Jalen Hurts, there's confidence he'll get away. I don't think we have that with Brock Purdy. And I think if it's crunch time, 2-minute drill, Niners down by 6, the Eagles can send the house. I don't think the Niners can hold up. I mean, the main concern for me is that defense. The Niners are so good defensively, and that's what might carry them. But I think the nice thing for Nick Sirianni is that all they've done is preach plug and play and moving guys around constantly. And that's the bread and butter in San Francisco. it's not quite the extreme, that we see in San Fran, where Debo's in the backfield 1 minute, then he's a fullback, then he's a wideout, then he's a corner. Like, it could be anywhere. But I think there's like an element of familiarity with that and not being deceived and not falling for the bait that the Niners are going to lie out. They did play each other 2 years ago. Sure, different team, but there's plenty of tape to go back and watch. Like, the Niners aren't invincible. They're in a similar spot to the Eagles, where they've played fairly easy schedules this year. It will be both teams' toughest test. I think better quarterback wins, and that's the MVP candidate all day.
Better quarterback wins, and also, it's funny, you mentioned Jason Kelce's name there, and you released an article this week talking about this could be Jason Kelce's swan song. You released that literally the same day as I was on this show and spent 30 minutes talking about, how this could be his last, and we need to get him one final ring to cement his, legacy as one of the greatest centers, offensive linemen, period, of all time. Just randomly, let me ask you, if we win the Super Bowl, I'm not saying we will or not, it's going to be really tough, but if we win the Super Bowl, will Jason Kelce retire at the end of the year and walk away on top? Because he is playing at a really elite level, and to think that an elite player walks away on top, I mean, it's a great way to do it, but he's still damn good.
I mean, the inverse is you do a Tom Brady and you keep coming back and gradually chip away at that legacy. And, I mean, I'd liken it to, like, the band Oasis in England. Like, all anyone's done for 20 years is beg that Oasis get back together, right? And yet the appeal is they were so good and they went out when they were, like, this hot that if they came back, it wouldn't be the same. I think Jason Kelce has been so good for 12 years. Like, there was that, I think it was the first New Heights episode they did, and Travis asked him about his body. And he, like, really hesitated and sort of, like, didn't really know how to respond. Everything hurts. And it's like, I think he's probably at that place of inner peace where, the Eagles have drafted Cam Jurgens. I think if he stays past at least one more year, you start eating into that decay then of, like, you've spent high on a draft pick, you've got to turn it over to him at some point. Like, we thought Dickerson could have been that guy before, but he's just been brilliant at guard. Yeah, I mean, a second ring, like, it's not really going to get better than that for Kelce. He's achieved everything he could ever want to. He goes out with the best team possible, the best vibes possible. And, it might have been something he never really thought he'd get again. Like, 2017 was so magical. I didn't expect to be here within 5 years. I thought maybe a couple of years down the line, sure. So, yeah, if I was him, I'd probably definitely, especially after hitting 14 million this season, I would definitely think about, all right, I've been paid the highest center in the league. I've won the Super Bowl. Like, it can't get much better from that point. So, like, give the big soppy goodbye. And, just to get him on the team somehow, like, whatever it is, just make him a coach, have him in the kitchen, to do whatever. Just get him in that building, because he is a Philadelphia treasure, like an absolute hero.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, again, this is Liam Jenkins, the big boss man over at Philadelphia Sports Network. You can check out their website, phillysportsnetwork.com. Like I said, some fantastic writers, great content, great work every single day on that site. And like I said when I brought you on, I mean, the jump you guys have made this year and the big news with Metro and everything like that, I mean, you guys are kicking ass. And I love reading your site on a regular basis. So
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
I appreciate your time coming on the morning show this morning.
Yeah, no worries. All good. It's like mid-afternoon.
Mid-afternoon for you. So it's early morning for me. Mid-afternoon. That's the problem. I do this morning show every single day. And it's hard for me to find guests because who wants to wake up and do a morning show? I was trying to hit up 49ers, beat writers, and I'm like, oh, shit, it's like 5:30 in the morning for them. They're not going to come on this show. So, I appreciate your time this morning. It really means a lot to me to have you come on.
Yeah, no worries. Keep doing what you do, man. You got something great cooking here. Just keep grinding. I know it can seem like trust me, I've been there with YouTube and all of it. Like, it took me years to get to that point of being able to quit and do it full time. But you've got something unique with what you do. Just keep at it. And anything I can do, just give me a shout.
Hey, I appreciate it. Again, Liam Jenkins. Make sure you guys follow Philadelphia Sports Network. Thank you very much, Liam.
Good. No worries. Have a good one, man. Cheers.
Go Birds, my man. Thanks. All right, that was Liam Jenkins there. We're going to wrap up Training the AM right there for the day. That was a great way to end the show there. Great interview, great content there from Liam. And I really do. I do hype up all my guests whenever I have them on the show. But I really do truly think that everybody should be reading phillysportsnetwork.com. They do some great work over there. We'll be back tomorrow. It'll be time to get to the nitty gritty tomorrow, get down to the X's and O's, the key battles, the key matchups of the game as we make our final predictions for Eagles 49ers on Sunday. I'm your host here on Trending the AM every morning, Phil Stifle. Make sure, like I said, you do me that favor. You like, you subscribe on the YouTube page, turn notifications on. today at about 3:30, I believe it is. We had Connor Thompson from 97.5. Myself and Dylan, we did an interview. We recorded it yesterday afternoon. It drops on the YouTube page only today at 3:30. So again, if you turn the notifications on, you don't miss a second of any of the action on DSM Media. Again, if you're watching this on replay, drop your comments, thoughts, questions. I will go back and check every single one of them always. Everybody have a great day. As always, go Birds, go Jalen Hurts, go Sixers, and yeah, we'll see you tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. as always.
And Philadelphia has it.